Welcome back for part 3 in the series of Lab 2020. In the first part, we built a domain controller, we installed Server 2019, and we set up Active Directory as a domain controller for our domain. We also set up a Windows 10 machine, installed Windows 10, and we also, during the Windows 10 video, you had saw that I was building file servers 1 and 2. Just way this video we wouldn't go through and install Windows again. So first thing we want to do is go back to Windows 10, and there's something with Windows 10 that's built in. It's a built-in sleep mode. So when this machine hits at a certain time, in this case this machine set up for 30 minutes, I believe 20 or 30 minutes is the defaults. When the defaults happen, what happens is the VM goes into a pause. So you'll see just like this. So I'll show you here, suspend guess. So this is what happens. The VM will go into saving the state and will pause. And it sits like this. Now this is, it happens in ESXi. It happens in VMware Workstation. So what you do is you resume. And you need to go to the control panel. Go to power options and change when the computer sleeps and say never. And that will get rid of that pausing mode forever. So that's what you have to do to Windows 10. Now this part 3 is going to talk about file servers. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure they're on our network. So I have gone ahead and I've already given them an IP address. And pointing to the domain controller's DNS server. So that's done. They are on the network. And now what we want to do is go to local server. Let's full screen this. And I've named the machine FS1 2019. So this way I know it's file server 1. And now what we want to do is join the domain. So the domain we created, that was our domain. If everything's working, we should get a prompt. And now we have to use the administrative account. It will go connect to the domain controller and join the domain. And click OK, close, and restart. We'll go to the domain controller and confirm. There's an FS1 computer. And there it is. We will also go into DNS and confirm that the machine has been added to DNS. So once it reboots, it will add itself to DNS. So as we see, we have our domain controller, Windows 10, file server 1. Now let's go to file server 2 and do the same thing. So go to local server. Click on the workgroup, file server 2, FS219, 2019. Change the domain. It will then prompt us to log in again. Now, if you've never done this before, the reason why it pops up for credentials is because you have to be someone with credentials high enough to let you join the domain. It just doesn't let anybody just join the domain. So if you don't have the right password, it will not join. So let's reboot and let's look at 2019 computers. We should see the second computer and then go to DNS. Once it comes up, so while it's coming up, let's right click on the file server 1 and let's make sure it has disks. This is the Windows operating system disk. We want to add another disk so we can create from file shares because it is going to be a file server. So the defaults, create a new disk, and let's create a 20 gigabyte disk. and let's click store virtual in single file. The reason why is because if you put split, it makes multiple files and it takes away the performance of the machine because it's got to go between each and every file whenever you create a disk. If you just set up a single file, it's one VMDK. This setting up here is allocate disk now. This is equivalent to when you buy a physical 20 gigabyte hard drive. It's physical, it's 20 gigabytes, it's already allocated to run as a 20 gigabyte disk. When we say allocate now, what this does is says, okay, the disk is a file, and VMDK file, let's make it 20 gigabytes in size automatically, even though there's no files. In the case of a VM lab, or if you're trying to conserve space, you would say no, let it be thin. So to create a disk that could be maximum sized up to 20 gigabytes, but nothing will be on it. So let's leave it at that, thin, and store single file. Finish, and the disk is there. Let's go over to our second server. You see it's up. Let's add the second disk now. Give it 20 gigabytes, store as a single file, finish, and then OK. So we go back to our domain controller, and now we see that both file servers are there in DNS and in Active Directory. You could just go to Start Administrative Tools, there's Active Directory, and there's DNS. That's how I already had them open. Okay, so let's go to users. What we want to do is I want to create some users. So let's create a new user. Let's call user 1. And let's not change the password. And let's copy this user now. Now, first thing we want to do is when we create this user, we want to do some more features and function with this user. So I want to make sure the user is going to use a home folder. So in order to do that, we need our file servers up and running. So let's pause this for a second and go back to our file servers. So let's log on. Okay, we want to make sure we're logging on to the domain. So there. I have a username CompuGuy. And let's log on here. Same thing. The administrator is local. We want to log on as the domain account. Because we want to centralize everything. So first thing we want to do is we want to go to the disk. So we see a 20 gigabyte disk. Let's make a new volume. But first thing you want to do is initialize it. Okay, it's a GPT. We want to make a new volume. 20 gigabyte E, and we'll just we'll call this FS for the volume, and create. So now here you should see an E drive. Now let's go over to file server 2 and do the same thing. File server storage, go to disks. We have the disk 20 gigabyte, initialize, GPT, new volume. I call it FS, create. And we go here, we see that we both have it. Okay, so let's go to file server 1. On file server 1, let's create a folder named home. On file server number 2, let's do the same thing on the E drive and make a folder named home. Let's go back to file server number 1. And we want to right click on home, and this time we want to share it. So share, leave it alone, no permissions needed. Done. Go to file server number 2, right click, properties, share, click sharing, done. Now what we want to do is go back to file server number 1 and do the following. Right click on home, properties. Let's look at advanced sharing. So permissions is everyone. Everyone has full control. So now what we want to do is we want to lock it down so only certain users can get there. So what we do now is to get into home, I don't care if anybody can get into there. So let's go edit and let's say add and let's say domain users. Check name. So this means anybody who logs into the domain has access to this folder. Now let's leave that and click OK. Now let's go to advanced and go to domain users, edit, and we want to say this folder only. So just the home folder only. We want to give it list. Right? So read, execute, read, and there. So that's all we're doing is allowing it to see that folder only. Okay. Now let's go back to the second server and do the same thing. Home, security. Now we can just go here and say add, right? Domain user. Just to cut out the extra step. And we want to give it just there, but we want to change this to this folder only. So that saved us a step. So we can do it either way. So domain users have only specific privileges. So now we want to go in there. There's nothing in there and nothing in there. So now let's go back to our domain controller. So on the user, let's click / fs1 2019 and put home and then /% username %. When I click apply, so I'm going to copy this first because I want to make sure I have the path. I click apply, the username gets put there. So let's click OK and be done. So now when I go back there, username has a home drive. Now let's go to the file server 1 and notice how it created the folder. And that folder, the user automatically gets full control of their disk. Now you can adjust that later. It's a lot of manual override. Let's just leave it alone and leave it as that. Let's go back to the domain controller and now let's create more users. So let's create a copy of this user and call it user 2. Okay, leave it alone, finish. Now what I want to do is I want to create another user, because if you notice the user number 2, it copied it, but it put user 2 in the home drive. If I go to the file server, there's now 2 users. So now I want to balance it out. I want to put 2 on each. So instead of copying the user, I'm going to say new user. User 3. Okay, take away that. Okay, created user 3. Let's rename this user so it looks the same. Okay, display name. There you go. So user 3 now has no profile. So let's go here and paste. Now you notice how I said Z. Let's make this M. Click here, user number 3. Okay. Now we want to copy this user because now it's pointing to the right path, and we'll make user 4. I'll show you what I mean about the drive letter in a second. User 4 and password Now we could script this with PowerShell, or we'll do that again in another video. Oh. Okay. So we have user 3 using M, user 4 using M, user 1, I think I left a default as Z. So let's change that to M. Apply. And let's do number 2. Let's change that one to M as well. Now what that does is going to force the user to take the drive letter and map it automatically. So as you can see, file server 1, 2, 3, 4. See, we put it all on one file server. So what if you want to change it and you want to balance them out? So let's go here and let's change this to number 2. Click apply. Okay, number 4. Let's change that one to number 2 as well. So let's go to number 1 because we moved them, and delete 3 and 4. So we have 1 and 2 there, and we have 3 and 4 there. So let's go to our client and test this. So go here, user 1. Log on. It's the first time we've logged on the domain with this new user. It's setting up a local profile. Let's go to the folder structure and notice how M drive is mapped. So that is their home drive. So let's test. Right, let's go to file server 1, username 1, there's 2 folders. Let's log off. And log in as user number 3, just so we see both profiles. Sorry, home drives. So that's pretty much it. That's how you set up a file server for very basic file services. Once we log in, we'll confirm the drive. So we see there, file server user 3. Back here, and let's confirm the folders there. There it is. And let's create new folders. Let's go back to the file server number 2, and you see it's there. So this is file services basic. What we want to do now is we want to add a little more to this. So let's work with a process, a role. We go back here in server management. Let's add a role. We want to add FSRM, File Resource Server Manager, or FR. So you want to open up your roles, you go to File Server Storage, and we want to put in FSRM, File Server Resource Manager. So that's what we want for now. In the future video, we will do some other stuff, but that's all we want right now. We want to confirm that our CD, the Windows CD, is still connected. So we want to continue. We don't have to put path, and let that install. Let's go to the second server and do the same thing. Close these. Add roles. And let's add FSRM. Next, install. So what this tool does is now we can set a quota So let's say you want to limit your users on how much file space they can use rather than giving them the whole access to the drive. So as you see, we have a 20 gigabyte disk. But what if you had a 200 terabyte disk and you had 300 users? What if one starts dumping torrents and files and junk, filling up the file server? So now what happens is they end up taking up all the space. So what we do is quota. So you're familiar with Google Drive or OneDrive. They give you 16 gigs or 15 gigs or 5 gigs. Well, that's a quota size, right? If you pay more, you get more space. So what we're going to do now is we're going to close this because we've already installed the tool. Installation succeeded. Close this. Let's go back to File Server 1 and let's open up FSRM. So it's under Windows Administrative Tools, FSRM. So you could do file screen management, you can do file management tasks, you could look for files like, let's say someone has a torrent file, you can search for torrents and delete them. You could say, I don't want music on here, so MP3s, find them and delete them. You can use file screen management to do that. There's also reports. So let's look on the C drive. It automatically creates a storage reports folder. That storage report folder is also a share, I believe. Yes. So I have set it up previously. So what you could do is storage reports. You could share it if you want, or you could just have it so it's here. So schedule reports will write reports here on how often file services are used on this server. So first thing you want to do is set up a quota. So right now there's no quota. So let's set up a quota that says on the M drive or the home drive, everybody underneath there is going to have a 5 gigabyte limit. Right, so auto template, great quote on new and existence. So we're going to auto template everything inside of home at 5 gigabytes. So click create, and there it is. Now when we refresh, it automatically creates the profiles for them being 5 gigabytes. Now you could turn this, let's edit this, right? Let's just refresh here. Okay, so let's double click on this, and now we see that there is a setting for there. Now let's say this user we want to change. So we click on the user, we have a 5, see how there's other templates? So 5 gigabyte limit, that's what we're giving them. And we could say a description, we could say home drive. 5 gigabyte limit. Hard quota means at 5 gigabyte, it stops letting them write files. You could do soft, which means it allows them to pass it. You're just monitoring the sizes that they're doing so you can pull reports from the storage reports. So what we'll do is leave it on hard. They will get a threshold email at 85%. They will get an email and an event log will be stored on the server at 95%. And at 100%, they won't be able to write anything, but they will also have an email saying they're full. And the event log is stored on the server. So we click OK, and that's what that user will get, right? So see how description home drive, right? Home drive, same thing. So now refresh. We can now edit this one. Let's go here to quota templates. So we see 5 gigabytes. Let's rename this one. So let's edit it. And let's call this one. Let's copy it. And we're going to call this one home drive. This way you don't have to create another one. So apply it to the original template. So now we have a home drive one here. See how it took the original one and renamed it? The quota's here. Refresh. Home drive source template. So what we did here was description. We don't have to put one now. So now what happens is those two users now have a home drive set up for 5 gigabytes. Now let's say we go here, and let's say we create a new user, right? Sorry, let's copy it. So we're going to copy this user, and we're going to call it user 5. Next. Okay. So this user 5 has a profile on home user 5. Home user server 1, home user 5. Okay. Let's go back to the file server and let's create. It automatically puts a quota because on the home drive we told it everybody who gets created gets a quota. As you see, the users are there. So let's test this 5 gigabytes. So let's change it. Let's change this quota on the template just so we can test it. So let's change this to 5 megabytes. Apply it to everyone down below. And now we have a 5 megabyte limit. Now that's very low. It's just a test. So now user 1 is who we're logged on here, right? Or we're user number 3. So let's go user number 3. Let's create a, let's see if we could download something. Okay. Let's download Google Chrome. Save. So let's go to downloads. Here it is here. So let's go here. Downloads. This is 1200 kbytes. Let's copy this. Go to M and put it on here. Paste. Right? It copied up no problem. So now let's log off. Let's log on as a user who has a quota. Now you may ask, why would you want to quota somebody? As I mentioned earlier, if you have limited drive space, you want to restrict users to dumping large files, or you just want company data if it's corporation or your own. In this case here, we're just lab testing. So this is lab testing how to use quota management. So the user 1 is logged on, right? It has 5 megabytes. It tells the user they only have 5 megs. So as you see, the disk is 20 gigs. But the user only sees what they're offered for a quota. So they only have what they've been given. So if you want to give them 5 gigs, like similar to OneDrive, 15 gigs, whichever you want to give them, you can lock them down to only their space, which is a good idea for users so they don't waste disk space. So let's test this. So I'm going to go download Google Chrome. Okay, we're going to go to our downloads folder. Okay, let's close our browser. And let's copy this to our home drive. Paste. Okay, so 1200 kbytes, which is 1.2 megabytes. Okay, we've only got 5 megabytes. So what if we copy this, paste it again? Okay, let's paste it one more time. Okay, paste it one more time. Paste it one more time. There you go. So we've already filled their drive. Now, if I had email set up, I would have got an email saying, hey, you have no disk space. So see how it did that? So now I'm limited to my 5 gigabytes. So in order to do something, I need to delete something. to be able to paste it and write to my disk again. If I want to paste again, more than likely, the next time we'll say, sorry, you don't have enough disk space. And there you go. So as you see, it does work. So it forces people to say, hey, you know, you got too many duplicates there. So how about stop wasting our disk space and just conserve what you need. And as you see on the server, Chrome is there. So that's what quotas are for. And that's it. It's very simple. You just put on the root volume and everything created after that gets done. Now, if you have a specific user, let's say user 1, you know, they've complained a little bit, so you want to give them a little bit more. So you can give them the default 250 gig expanding. You copy it to their profile, and now they, you know, you're being nice. You expanded a disk for them, and let's see what they have now. So see how they have 250 megabytes now? That's all you have to do to expand their space. Just go to the FSRM and convert their profile. See how it jumped out of that profile, went to the new profile. So let's go back to the user and let's say, you know what? We need to put this user back because they're done what they needed. We need to put them back. You copy the profile back to their user and click OK, and they get put back into the profile. So you can move these users anywhere you want. And as you can see, a report has been made. So let's go to storage reports. Generate report now. There's no reports. Let's schedule a report. Let's refresh here. We need to actually create them. So we'll get to that in the next video because we're going to be talking about all this stuff in the future video to talk about more advanced file services. So right now what we wanted to cover was just basically the quotas. So we set up quotas for the users, we set up some users, and now we have a functioning file server with users. Oh, there you go. With users. So we have users, we have file servers with quotas. Okay, so we have file servers with quotas. Now this file server, we didn't set up any quotas. Let's open here. FSRM. Quota templates we have there. Let's copy this one. And call this one home drive. Or sorry, browse. Point it to our home drive, and then you want to say create a quota on the path. We want to derive it from the 5 gigabyte, and we will auto apply for all future. And now let's rename it, call it home drive. Apply to all. Let's go to quotas and let's see if anything's been created. So it auto created those 2 folders with 5 gigabyte limitation. That's it. That's all there is to FSRM at this point. We will talk about more features here on the next videos, but I just wanted to get everything set up here because what we want to do in the next video, I'm going to attempt to show you how to bring a Linux client in and a Mac client into Active Directory, just to show you how we can manage those users in Active Directory. So we will attempt to do that on the next video. So far we got part 1, part 2, and part 3 of 2 file servers. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. Please comment down below if you want anything else in this video or in the future videos of this sets that I'm going to do. I'm thinking the next videos will be adding a Mac to Active Directory, adding a Linux machine to Active Directory, and perhaps we'll go on to DFS, which is Distributed File Services, to give you a maximum uptime for file servers. That's why we created two. So we will make a high available file system. We're also going to create two more high available machines. We're going to set a cluster on them, so Windows clustering, and then from the Windows clustering we're going to set SQL. So that's the intent of all this series of videos, and I'm hoping to get them done within the next 2 weeks, so we have a whole set series completed. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.